It is mind-boggling. They think China is closer to 900% debt to GDP, and money is sneaking out of the country through Hong Kong and through cryptocurrencies and jewelry and gold coins and overpaying for overseas assets. And if that dam breaks, they're going to unleash worldwide deflation because of their currency is going to be so cheap. People think Trump is just doing something silly. Trump is doing something very macro here. He is locking down our economic trade borders with China because he knows, and it's not just him, there's some really smart people, and they're doing everything they can to firewall us from China when this wave breaks.
Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you back, and I'm glad to have back on the line our friend Bob Kudla. He's the founder of Trade Genius, and we have so much to talk about. I barely know where to begin, and I do want to ask Bob about Basel III, which I guess goes into effect March 31st, according to our friend Ken Shorgen Jr., who I interviewed recently, and that is really going to shake up the world for these international criminal banks. There's no way Deutsche Bank will be able to comply with Basel III. So I think Deutsche Bank is going to have a very difficult time complying with Basel III, and that's right around the corner. So much to talk about. Bob, welcome back.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you coming back on. I'm getting all these Trade Genius alerts all the time. So many good trades, easy to make money on trades. So we can talk about that in a minute. But first, can you even believe this Jussie Smollett situation? This star of the show Empire had the audacity to make up a bold-faced lie and then use his powers of acting to go on ABC and the other Mockingbird mainstream platforms and spew the lie, which he knew was an absolute lie, a false flag, try to portray himself as some sort of hero who was targeted by bigots. And the whole story has unraveled, and now he's facing a felony. He's going to jail.
You know, I mean, it's just a case study of the times we're in. I mean, he's of the generation that it's all about them, and if they don't get their way, they sulk and they seek retribution and they seek things that they should have that they don't really deserve to have. And then also he thought by making this political statement, I mean, look, all his social media pictures with him with the Democrat activists. So, I think he was looking for, number one, sympathy, number two, money, but number three, he was looking for a stepping stone to a far bigger platform. And I'm just thankful it's blowing up. I mean, I don't know how many times these things have to blow up. I mean, the last 3 months we've had 5 or 6 of these things, and excuse me, I'm fighting a little cold. And 5 or 6 of these things, and they're, I mean, not only are they just fuzzy not right, I mean, these are absolute frauds. And I mean, good news for us is now people just aren't going to believe these people anymore. And I think it's coming around. I mean, you look at that superintendent from the Chicago Police Department. I mean, he's African American. I mean, he was beside himself with anger because it sets back all the progress that was made, and it makes people that are against that movement even now harder. And then people who are sympathetic are now want to step back. And then, there's no winners in this at all. I mean, it's just sad all the way around.
Well, you know what I think is sort of kicking into place here is a little thing called karma. Because what we're seeing with the Covington kids and Nick Sandmann is that he, his parents, and the attorneys they've hired are now suing the Washington Post for $250 million, Bob. And that's a big, big deal because Bezos' blog, Jeff Bezos, paid $250 million to buy that propaganda rag in the first place. So very strong message sent there. I want to read this tweet from James Woods, though, about Jussie Smollett. The degree of narcissistic injury this guy has inflicted on himself is so grievous, he probably won't survive it. I had the same thought, Bob. I actually feel the same way here. And James Wood says, to go from hanging with Obama to being a pariah overnight will be intolerable to him. They better have him on suicide watch. I actually think that's true. He was making $65,000 per episode on Empire. And evidently people are saying he staged this attack because he was unhappy with his salary on that show. So he concocted this entire thing, demonized an entire political group, anybody who supports Trump, under the premise of this concocted false flag, and now he's paying really the ultimate price. He's going to be unemployable, and James Woods is right. He's going to be a pariah. It's karma at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, I think this is a tipping point. I mean, now we got the new attorney general in there, Barr, and I think the Mueller thing's going to come to an end. And then now you notice the Epstein case down in Florida. You have the judge saying, "Hey, what the way in which his sentencing was recommended is or whatever reprieve he got for his crimes was illegal." And so there's some things I think are going to be unraveling. The next 60 days, I think are going to be times to behold. I mean, across the spectrum, you talk political here in the U.S., you talk Europe is ready to implode. You got China, who knows what they're doing over there? I mean, they're printing so much currency that, I mean, their currency may collapse, and that tsunami will wash around the world. I mean, there are some crazy things happening, Sean, and I think all the fingers of all the elites are in the dikes, and the dam keeps cracking.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We should talk about China here in a second. I saw an article about how much money they've printed in just the last month, I think it was. It's extraordinary. So your point's a good one there. Let's talk just briefly about Trade Genius, though. I keep getting these alerts on my phone, and made a nice move in NE, and it's been a great trade so far, moving the stops up. Do you want to tell people how that works? Because honestly, guys, if you have a brokerage account, this is the easiest way to trade and make money.
Yeah, so what we do, it's really quite simple. I mean, it's almost 27 years of creating an algorithm that grinds out profitable trades day in and day out. It's designed to hit singles and doubles. It's designed to what's called short swing trades, so we're not doing crazy day trading. It's designed to work with the companies that the names of, and then you're in a position where annually you can make 60 to 90% of the year if you just follow the signals. And this year, for whatever reason, we're just blowing it out. We're almost at 200% annualized right now, and because we're hitting the sweet spot of, I think, where we're going in the future in terms of commodities and gold and silver. And you were a recipient of that's an oil services company. I mean, we were in and out of it in 1 to 2 days, almost over 10% gain. And the trade before that was 27% for Gold Fields, and on and on and on. You can see them. We have a track record. We post those real time so people can see the trades that were taken, and that's what we do. And it just works really, really well. So we have a signal service. We have a chat room. We have hundreds of people in our chat room every day that are talking amongst themselves and with us in terms of how to trade, what's going on. Trades that may not show up on the signals are talked about. People talk amongst themselves to help each other, and a lot of very experienced traders in there. And then if you need any personal help or coaching, we have training classes, and we have webinars, and we have personal coaching. So it's a really good program. We've done it for a long time, and we just help people make money nearly every day in the market, and we do it the right way. And it's a good program. And the thing about it is we don't really care what the market does, because we're always looking for buying opportunities, and there's always a bull market somewhere, Sean, and our algorithms find it, and that's what we trade. And so, yeah, just real quick too, is that, as you know, I always put together special for you guys. And so we put together some bundles. And so before the end of the month, if you take advantage of anything that we do, you get those discounts. Just go to tradelikeagenius.com and take a look at bundles 1 through 6, and find something that you like, and come join us and trade with us. And we're doing just as well on the cryptocurrency side as well, Sean. And then we also trade binary options, which is a really nice way for people to trade with small amounts of capital. It teaches you how to trade, and you can really leverage your portfolio higher over time. So thanks for letting me share that with you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll put the link below in the more info section, guys, for Trade Genius. Bob, you mentioned the cryptos. There's been a big move off the bottom in the cryptos. Look at Litecoin, for instance. I'm very bullish on the future of Litecoin. I really think that Litecoin will eventually go back to its all-time highs and probably beyond. I think this whole crypto meltdown has been orchestrated so that the insiders, the Wall Street guys, can all get in on the cheap. It's what they love to do. It's what they did with Netflix after it went public. If anybody ever wants to go see an interesting chart, look at Netflix. I remember it well. It went up to like 36 from a $9 offering price. And I think within a year, it was back down to like 8 or 9, right where it was offered, and then to the moon. this is what they do, Bob. But your thoughts on Litecoin or the cryptos in general?
Yeah, it's my favorite. That's the one I started with. I started buying it, like, gosh, almost 2.5 years ago, and it's ironic because you hear all the blowback about, oh, cryptos are dead. I'm like, I bought this thing, average price $20. It's still 250% return. I mean, the stock market hasn't done that, and so I agree with you. Litecoin has a lot of utility. I mean, I'm also a fan of Bitcoin, but I like Litecoin a lot, and I agree with you. I think it's going to explode. And the more and more it's called the Metcalfe network effect. The more and more you get uses for this, the more and more people are going to want it and need it. And then the supply is limited. And then, we're going into a halving right now. And my partner, Phil, who does a lot of the crypto trading and signaling, put a chart up just the other day on our site that just showed people every time a halving comes a year in advance, what the stock and the cryptos do. And it just rockets. And I think people need to pay attention to it. And look, if you just throw a couple $1,000s at this, and even if you don't trade it and you wait a year or two out, I mean, people spend this much money at Starbucks going every day. You could turn around and turn a $3,000 or $4,000 investment into potentially six figures. And the more maniacal claims are seven figures, depending if currencies collapse. So I implore people to get a good understanding of this, and then we trade it. And so we do very well with it. We've done extremely well during the down market because we're traders, so we just followed the channels. And I totally agree with you on the bankers. They do this for everything, Sean. And if you notice, keep an eye on this. Maybe we'll talk about this next month. But the bankers may have caught themselves short in the palladium market, and that has big implications on the silver market. And if the silver market and the palladium markets blow up on the bankers, you're going to see the miners go sky high. You've seen nothing yet in terms of how high these miners can go. If these guys lose control of all these naked shorting positions they put together in palladium, silver, gold, what have you, they do it in food too, Sean. So this whole thing could just unravel it. And you know what? It's the same crooks like Deutsche Bank, UBS, the banks in London. That is the Babylon of the financial world over there. They perfected criminality, and that's where all the suppression takes place. So the people in New York can just say, "Hey, we didn't know anything about this stuff," but their fingers are all tied into it indirectly. And at some point, they run out of their ability to keep and suppressing this thing, and we call it the beach ball effect. You put a beach ball under the pool. After a while, you can't hold it down, and when it comes up, it flies out of the water. And that's what's going to happen with all of these commodities. It's just going to blow up on them, and you need to be positioned. If you don't trade it, you need to own some of it because it's going to be in your own financial best interest, and maybe even your best interest in survival, to be able to have these commodities that are going to be able to operate against an extremely inflationary environment that is, I call it inflationary depression, that's going to come, because what you're going to have is you're going to have prices going extremely high, and people's salaries are going to stay the same. And for people that are my age or older, we call that stagflation. Well, this will be stagflation on steroids.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned Deutsche Bank, and I couldn't agree with you more. 55 trillion in derivatives, we think. And here's an article here from Zero Hedge. The Berkshire trade, how Deutsche Bank conspired to conceal a $1.6 billion loss. The resulting loss was nearly 4 times its entire 2018 profit, and the biggest loss in the bank's history, and it never even had to disclose it. Bob, I was talking to Ken Georgian Jr. not too long ago about Basel III implementation on March 31st, which is going to really make it much harder for these criminal banks to appear solvent. Let's just put it that way. And he doesn't think Deutsche Bank will be able to adhere to Basel III. Your thoughts on Basel III? Could this be the big moment we've been waiting for? Could this be the trigger for a collapse?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how they can hold it back, Sean. I mean, just like the commodities, they've been suppressing interest rates. And they've been the derivative books of these guys dwarfs the GDP of Germany, and I just don't know what they're going to do. I mean, the first bank that says force majeure is probably going to be the only bank that survives. And I guarantee you they'll do something out of Basel III to hide this, because I think the elites are so freaked out by these socialists and progressives that are coming out of the the woodwork in Europe and the United States that, Trump doesn't look half bad to these people now. And so they're going to figure out something. Look, there's no accident that the central banks have been buying gold and silver like they've never bought it before. They're trying to get a hold of these hard currencies to act as collateral to probably position themselves for maybe some sort of currency jubilee for themselves. So yeah, that's why I said the next 60 days are going to be absolutely wild. All I know is that owning gold, owning silver, owning miners, owning food stocks, and being short or out of the stock market is probably the prudent play for people, because I think the volatility is going to be overwhelming, especially if China unravels.
Yeah, we'll get to China in a second. Before we do that, though, let's just talk about the madness of these liberals. If the liberals, let's just say, for instance, what happens if Bernie Sanders, who has now announced that he's running for president, becomes president in 2020? Let's just paint the picture for people, because what we're seeing with Cortez's Green New Deal, which is the most preposterous thing that anybody has ever taken pen and put to paper. What happens if we get one of these leftist, Marxist, communist liberals in the White House? I'll tell you what, guys. Look what's going on in Illinois right now, where they have more than a $100 billion pension shortfall. And Illinois has just raised its minimum wage, more than doubling it, to $15 an hour. Do you have any idea what that does to small businesses and restaurants? It's going to devastate what is already probably the worst state economy in the union. And then beyond that, look what's happening in California, Bob. Trump is demanding $2.5 billion back for the boondoggle project, California's high-speed rail fail, and he's pulled a $920 million grant. The Ponzi scheme in California, which was high-speed rail, is exactly the Ponzi scheme these idiots would try to unleash on this entire country if they were allowed to do so. Where would we be if Bernie becomes the Marxist president?
Yeah, so well, let me talk Bernie first, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on in California, because I live here, and it's even worse than you described. Look, AOC, she's doing what she's doing by design. In the military, we call that a feint. So what she's doing is she's making all the noise over there, so everybody flocks over there and pays all attention on her, and then somebody that's a little bit more reasonable is going to be running for president, and they're gonna look reasonable by comparison to her. So I caution people to just ignore her and watch. Bernie Sanders has the money, but he's 80 years old. I don't know if he's going to make it. You got to watch one of these other knuckleheads that come up. And yeah, look, the policies that they're going to enact are ruinous. And you don't have to look any further. Forget Venezuela. Just look at Italy. Look at Greece. If you want to have examples in the first world, if you want to call it that, of what it's like. I mean, in Greece, people are living a subsistence living. Italy, subsistence living, because they're trapped and they have policies, and that some people's taxations are over 100% of their income. Go figure that. So it's just crazy. And they have no regard for logic whatsoever. So you're going to see the most zaniest things come out. But California is doing some really crazy stuff too. You talked about the rail thing. Today they're announcing a sugar tax. Okay, that they want to put in for all sodas. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna deli slice these taxes out, Sean. So they could just always have a reason why it's a good idea, until you have this hidden VAT tax or this hidden sales tax that is just enormous. And then the other thing they're doing is, and this is what's gonna crater California, is that for the social media companies, they want to require them to share their revenue with the population of California. So if you are a user of a social media company such as YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, I think those are the big three that matter, is that instead of the company keeping the money for you interacting with your friends or whatever, the ad revenues they receive, you're going to be required to pay what's called a dividend to the citizens of the state of California. Well, what company in their right mind is going to stay in California as a headquarters? they'll have to leave, reduce their presence to zero so there's no assets to be seized in a lawsuit, and then just refuse to pay it. But that's Silicon Valley, and so that's the kind of crazy stuff. These people can't think any farther than today. They have no concept of unintended consequences. It just sounds good, and it's all they do, and that's all and how all they act.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Bob, I think the Republic would be on death watch if these people got control. I mean, it's just obvious. Their track record is abysmal, but they don't care because what they're doing, their track record shows that they don't care. What they're trying to do is bring down the Republic. They don't want liberty. They don't want borders. They don't want sovereignty. They want illegal immigrants to be able to vote. They want abortion on demand in the 9th month. And if the baby survives the abortion, kill it after that. These people are literally, I talked about it with Harley Schlanger, and of course, YouTube demonetized the video, labeling it not suitable for most advertisers. But the point is these people have a satanic worldview, Bob. That's what Harley and I talked about. And it was immediately labeled not suitable for most advertisers to have that conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and they've demonetized videos that I've done because I mentioned Tesla and it'd probably be an overvalued stock. So they're protecting the advertisers they want to protect. So yeah, I just don't know where this is going to go, but they're searching out money pots now, Sean, and I think it's going to get ugly. And the social media companies, look, China has a social credit system. The U.S., we outsourced it to these guys, and they're doing the work. I understand they basically Chase Bank has basically defunded a performance artist by basically blocking their bank account. So I mean, this stuff is really getting wild, and that's why crypto is going to have to happen, because you're going to need these permissionless transmission mechanisms for people to survive in an environment where the left wants to take total control. And their view is really going back to almost a feudal kind of society, Sean, and where they're happy to be kings of dunghill. You don't have to look any further than Mexico. I mean, there's some beautiful chalets, beautiful areas, and the rich and the elite fly to those. They fly right over the people that they're totally suppressing, and they can care less. They're blinded by it. Brazil's the same way. Maybe the new right winger guy that got in there, the Baldessari, is going to clean some of that stuff up. But yeah, and that's what they despise people who don't believe as they do. They despise them. So that's why they have no compunction about killing babies, in the womb, out of the womb. They could care less. Their worldview is that, I don't know whether they think they're God or life doesn't matter afterwards. I'm going to just take everything I could take now. It's beyond my ability to comprehend it, Sean.
Yeah, you and me both, man. But I think that's because we're God-fearing people, and they're not. I mean, literally, I hate to reduce it to that, because I could be friends with an atheist. I'm sure there's many atheists that are good people, but these people are worse than atheists. They literally have a satanic worldview, which is an anti-human worldview, which is why they stand for the things they do. Open borders, abortion on demand, take the guns, seize your money. Hey, I'm trying to find the article here. I just read this a day or two ago, I think, about China printing a record amount of money, and I can't find the article. Had you seen that article? Do you know what I'm talking about? I did find one here from 2018. What's behind global inflation? China creates a record 2.9 trillion yuan in new loans in 1 month. But that article is about a year old. I can't find the one that I thought I read just a day or two ago.
I know I've been following very closely, because that was the seed of our 20% market collapse at the end of 2015. China has printed more loans in the last 30 days than they did all of 2016, when they tried to dig out from the last collapse they had in 2015. It is mind-boggling. They say that China's not 300% debt to GDP. They think China is closer to 900% debt to GDP. And money is sneaking out of the country through Hong Kong and through cryptocurrencies and jewelry and gold coins and trips and overpaying for overseas assets. And if that dam breaks, what's going to happen is they're going to unleash worldwide deflation, because of their currency is going to be so cheap that any other exporter around the world is going to just be rolled over with a tsunami of relatively cheap goods coming in. And China values social cohesion over everything else. So they don't care if any of those companies are making any money whatsoever, as long as those people don't try to kill them. And so what that means for us is that, and that's why, look, people think Trump is just doing something silly and very micro and petty. Trump is doing something very macro here. He is locking down our economic trade borders with China because he knows, and it's not just him, there's some really smart people, even people probably not even on the same side of the fence as he is, seeing this is coming. And they're doing everything they can to firewall us from China when this wave breaks. And it's coming. And that's why I said, look, we're going to have to at some point just shut off trade with China or tell them we're only going to let you trade this much with us. And it's going to come to that. That's why they can't agree on any of this stuff, Sean. These are hard issues. China cannot agree to what we're demanding. And there's no way we're going to let China do and operate the way they have in the past, because they would literally deindustrialize the rest of our country and put everybody in the poorhouse. So it's going to be just absolutely chaotic, and they can't control it anymore. The genie's out of the bottle. And G, however you say his name, he's become, another mini, emperor over there. And so he's smelling his own roses and thinking he's a genius. And the counsel he's getting is very nationalistic, militaristic, and short-sighted. And I think it's really going to cause China great harm. And especially if we go into a solar minimum, which shows in the climate records that China will have failed harvests. And he's going to have to come to two countries to get enough food to survive at that point, the U.S. and Brazil. And Brazil is already backing off, and the U.S. has obviously been backing off. So it's going to be quite a sight to see.
Yeah, a billion hungry people does not a happy nation make, I'll tell you that. And, we only have, 300 million, 325, 350 million people in this country. I don't even know what the number is because we don't know how many illegals are in this country. But again, it's the Democrats that want to give everything to everybody for free. So the promises we'll see out of Harris, the promises we'll see out of Bernie, the promises we'll see out of Cortez, the promises we'll see out of the morally bankrupt left is free stuff for everybody, free stuff for people who aren't even citizens, and to hell with having to figure out how to pay for it, which really leads me back to California. And this is a great article, an obituary for California's bullet train. It's Gavin Newsom, the new governor, who's finally thrown in the towel on this lunatic project that was Jerry Brown's. He wanted it to be his legacy. This failed project, this elevated bullet train that will go non-completed, and they won't tear it down. So it'll be an eyesore forevermore. And it reminds me of a scene from the movie Idiocracy, where they had highways that just stopped and the cars were driving off the edge. And that's what I think California is. It's an idiocracy run by absolute idiots. And his other legacy is going to be his mandatory vaccinations bill, SB 277. The guy is a demon. He's godless. He doesn't care about people. He's in the pocket of Big Pharma. I really don't think there's a better example of the lunatic left than this stupid bullet train to nowhere. And now you have, thank God, President Trump saying, we're going to claw back the money we already gave you. So it's the boondoggle of a century. It really is.
Yeah, I live in Southern California, and so we go up to Central Valley quite a bit. And I mean, first of all, the overpasses there are extremely ugly to begin with, and it's an area that's kind of blighted. So it's gonna be a scene out of one of those post-apocalyptic movies. They're gonna be using that as background, and it's just amazing. We were always just, why did they decide to build it there? And and they decided to build it there because they figured we got the money, and we're gonna force everybody then to pay the rest of it for the areas that we know people will want it. And it blew up in their face, but it's the other thing he's going to be known for too, is that, he told the world that we're going to be in droughts in California for far as the eye can see. So we don't have enough dam or water capacity. And just 2 days ago, the NOAA and the National Weather Service and some of the climate modelers came back and said, well, we're probably wrong with that. And we're going to start seeing more and more unseasonably wet years in California mixed in with these drought years because they can't get the climate models right. And right now, all of our dams are full, Sean. Every single one is full. And we haven't even got into the month of March, which is our biggest wet month of the year. And next year we have already the the weather guys are talking about the El Nino that was supposed to come this year. We didn't even really have an El Nino this year. The El Nino is coming next year, and when that comes, it's just we're going to have lakes in Central Valley, and LA might be underwater. I mean, it's just going to be absolutely mind-boggling because of the short-sightedness. They can't do things because it competes with their philosophy. So they have an inability. They have an inability to think past their rhetoric.
Can I ask what your prediction is for the 2020 election? I mean, there's nobody who can challenge President Trump on the Republican side. That would be foolish. Of course, the left will try to impeach him for crimes he's never committed, including Russiagate. It sounds like Mueller's about ready to announce the closure of his investigation, I think in the next week, with Barr now the Attorney General. At least that's what I'm reading. Your thoughts on the 2020 election? Who could they possibly throw up against him? Is it Bernie? Bernie seems to be the only one that would have any street cred with anybody on the left because they despise Hillary. So who is it? Bernie? It's I don't see who else they'd have. Beto? Beto's a joke.
Well, no. Anybody who's declared so far, I think, is unelectable. And then Bernie has the name recognition, but by the time the 2020 election comes, the guy's going to be 82 years old. And so I just don't think people are going to be that excited about him running. And, and he doesn't look healthy as, Trump looks vigorous and Bernie just looks like a mad old man. And so, the person I'm watching of interest is from the Democratic side, maybe not this election, but 2024 is Tulsi from Hawaii. She needs name recognition, but she says a lot of things that, a lot of people, I'm former military, but I'm more of a Fortress America guy, and I'm not really too interested in all these foreign wars because I think they drain us because I think we're fighting Europe's wars for them. And I think she'll appeal to a lot of people in that regard. And so, so that's the thing that I'm watching, but I think Trump has it in the bag unless something really off the wall comes at him.
Don't you think it's shocking that McCabe went on 60 Minutes and basically admitted to treason and said, yeah, we were colluding and we all got together, we met in secret. And see, this is what I love about YouTube. They're banning any conspiracy videos when the world's run by conspiracy. The whole left, the deep state, aligned against our president. A conspiracy to try to topple the sitting president, admitted to on 60 Minutes by Andrew McCabe, saying, yeah, we met in private. We wanted to conspire. Our plan was to topple the president and remove him using the 25th Amendment, even though he's perfectly sane and perfectly suited and capable of being the president. They wanted to do that anyway. That's treason, Bob. And yet I don't see any indictments. Do you? Is Barr going to indict any of these seditious criminals?
These guys are so in bed with each other that I think it's going to take, somebody pulling on the right thread for the whole thing to unravel. And maybe that's this thing with Epstein might be the method they use to do it. But yeah, I mean, look, this guy is probably an attorney, McCabe, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize the 25th Amendment was not designed for that. The guy's in power 2 weeks, and you're going to say he's incompetent to act as president, because you don't agree with his policies. They had no evidence on the Russian collusion side, and they know. They looked at all the unredacted data. They were just pissed off. They lost the election. And I think somebody said the other day is that this was absolutely a panic move on their part because nobody in their wildest dreams thought that Trump would win. So they thought this whole network they were building within the organization was going to be the stormtroopers for Hillary. Trump comes in and now the whole thing's exposed. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays. I commend Trump just for his absolute patience in all this. He's just letting this stuff play out and play out and play out. And now they got the attorney general in there that has the gravitas because he's been in the inside baseball player for a long time. If he moves forward with trying to expose some of this stuff, they're not going to be able just to dismiss it because he's not Trump's guy. And so that's what I'm hoping for. If this stuff doesn't get exposed and cleansed, then, our nation's in deep weeds.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'll try to find a good tweet from the president to end on. But before we do that, let's wrap up the whole conversation about these leftist, Marxist, communists and the hellhole that California has been turned into because of them with this post from Q February 21st, 2019, post 2854. And he links to an article from Forbes and writes, "They know what's best for our country? Pelosi, California rep since 1987. Maxine Waters, California rep since 1991. Adam Schiff, California rep since 2001. Dianne Feinstein, California rep since 1992. Harris, Liu, lead by example. California's estimated debt is $2 trillion. Homelessness population on the rise, highest tax rates in the country, undocumented immigrants in California versus the nation, uncontrollable state government spending. If you can't fix your own home state, what makes you think you can fix the country?" Q writes, "If you are living in one of the 49 other states, you should learn from the lesson that is California. If you are living in California, there is always the lesson of how Michigan came to be governed by a more centrist government. Of course, that came after the failure of the prior government. For now, however, for all its concern for sustainable foods and products, California is on a high-speed rail to unsustainability. Hashtag facts matter." Facts do matter, Bob. Anybody paying attention should know that this country's doomed if it's left in the hands of these leftists like Pelosi, Waters, Schiff, and Feinstein.
Yeah, and one thing California is under the under the radar right now, Sean, is that driver licenses have to be upgraded to Homeland Security standard, and you have to have two verifiable ballot identifications. They don't both have to be pictures. One has to be a picture ID. The other one has to prove that you live where you say you live with your name on it. And California tried to do a fast one around the feds by saying, well, them responding to the mail we sent them should count as secondary ID. And Homeland Security said no. And two things from that. One is they figured out this is a way in which illegal people can still maintain the facade that they're legal, or they won't get this ID that allows them to travel, number one. And number two is that everybody, including me, may have to go back within 1 year and reprove my citizenship by two pieces of ID in order to drive. And the DMV is already overwhelmed. So it's going to be, everywhere you turn over a rock and hornets are coming out everywhere. This place is a mess. And a model they are not.
Yeah, well, we're in agreement on just about everything because we're right-thinking people, we're God-fearing people, and I just think that most people in this country are, regardless of what the Mockingbird mainstream media would have you believe. I think the Jussie Smollets of the world are really very much the minority, Bob. We see so many great people from all walks of life and skin colors that want to make America great again and do support President Trump. So we'll round out this conversation with a tweet from Donald J. Trump on February 20th. "California now wants to scale back their already failed fast train project by substantially shortening the distance so that it no longer goes from LA to San Francisco. A different deal and record cost overruns send the federal government back the billions of dollars wasted." That will be the legacy of crazy Governor Jerry Brown, a boondoggle train to nowhere. And Bob, hey, I appreciate you coming back on. It's always great to talk with you. And I'll remind people that the link to Trade Genius and this in the current deal for my listeners is in the more info section below this video. So thanks for coming on, Bob. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You know how much we appreciate your support over at Patreon. Very much do, because YouTube doesn't want these sorts of conspiracy videos being accessed by the general public, and they certainly don't want ads from Disney and Nestle appearing on these videos. So thank you for your support. And guys, I'd remind you that for real news 24/7, the antidote to corporate propaganda, you can visit us at thelibertymill.com and of course, sgtreport.com. Real news 24/7. Thanks for listening. God bless.
When you use Google, do you get more than one answer? Of course you do.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's a bug. We have more bugs per second in the world.
There
Because
are.
we should be able to give you the right answer just once.